All right, I'm going to start. Everyone is filtering in, so I want to introduce myself. My name is Angelica Magana-Rasin. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist at Mindful MFT with Vienna. I want to thank you all so much for allowing me to be here today. I know that you're usually used to Vienna, and so this is something different. So I just want to thank you and let you know that I'm really happy to be here and I'm really excited. This is my first webinar, so it's new for me, so you'll have to forgive me with some of the technology issues. But I guess for now we'll have to do some of the housekeeping just as people continue to filter in. Locate there's a chat box that you can open up, and I want you to put your Q&A questions right in there, and then at the end we'll kind of come back and we'll have some time to answer those questions. I believe there is also a hand signal, so you can raise your hand in the middle of the speech, and it's great because then I can get you guys. So maybe try it right now. Some people raise your hand if you're here, and let me see how that works because I don't. Oh, there we go. I have Megan. Okay, yes, people are raising their hands. It works. Great, thank you. And so I'll just use that, to check in to see if you guys are with me, if you're hanging in there. Yeah, great. So also let's see if we can check the chat box. Can people tell me where they're from? Can they put that in the chat box? Let's see if that works. Where is everyone from? Oh, we have a Dallas. Cool. Hello. We have Chicago. 2 from Chicago. Cincinnati, Toronto. Wonderful. Well, I'm so happy. Oh, Houston. There we go. This is so fun. So from all over, really. All right, slowly more people are filtering in. Great. All right, let's just wait a little bit longer, maybe a few minutes, and then we'll really get into it. Okay, great. So hopefully everyone has been able to figure out the technology. Let's start with just a little bit about myself. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been working with couples, specializing in couples, and so it's great. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy what I do. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and obviously is toxic relationships, and specifically toxic relationships in our romantic partnerships. And of course, you can pull stuff from here that will apply to, I think, other relationships outside of romance. But for the most part today, we're going to be focusing on those romantic relationships. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask, who here thinks that they have ever been through a toxic relationship? Can you raise your hand if that's you? Oh, okay. Yep, there we go. So I'm getting people raising their hand. Great. So yeah, it's awful, right? It just can completely, absolutely drain your emotions, make you second guess yourself, and it's just traumatizing. It's detrimental to our well-being. And so then again, the worst is when our toxic relationships are with our significant others, because our closest relationships serve the purpose of calming us down and grounding us and being a safe place for us to go to. They're our home. This is why the stakes become so much higher when we're in conflict with a loved one. The one person who can best calm us down when we're feeling scared is also the same person scaring us. It makes the brain go haywire, and then we get dysregulated and we're more likely to do destructive things. So it really comes down to how the emotional connection with our partner is. It's so powerful, that connection, that it is so painful when it's not there. Often what we don't realize that it's this loss of connection that causes us to engage in toxic patterns. So my work with couples is about identifying how the couple felt disconnected, kind of looking at and unlocking the underlying needs and longings that didn't get met behind the toxic patterns. So those could be needs of comfort, of feeling important, of feeling needed, safety. In those moments, the conflict itself isn't really the problem, like what is being thought about, but it's more about the loss of feeling a partnership, a feeling of being felt in our distress, of being alone in our distress. So the degree to which you believe your partner has your best interest in mind and can listen to you with interest and attentiveness and care, even if you're not reaching each other, that's just what allows, the calming and the nervous system to come down, and really is what allows us to navigate and enter into the conflict from this calm place where we can listen to one another, where we can connect to what's going on in our own bodies, to what's going on in our own mind, and it just slows everything down. And then that's the work of intimacy, is slowing things down so we can communicate from our internal worlds. So is everyone with me? Can I get a raise of hands just to make sure? All right, great. Thanks so much. So what is a toxic relationship? That's the question. Maybe does anyone want to try answering what that is? What would qualify as a toxic relationship? Okay. Well, I don't know. Oh, I get, how much work do you do on evaluating how the ego interferes? I like that. That's a good one. Anyone else? I think that's a really good one, because I think that's pretty broad and I think pretty accurate. It's kind of relative. There's really not one way to have a toxic relationship, in all honesty. It's less about having a toxic partner than it is about having the interaction of conflicting survival strategies that come from our past wounds and attachment traumas. Problems and loss of connection a lot of times have their origins in these past wounds being brought into the present, and then us projecting them onto our partner. But a lot of times we don't realize that this is happening because these traumas are beyond our awareness. They're stuck in our subconscious. That's what happens with traumas. They're stored beneath awareness, and then we don't know that they're there. And so then a trigger happens, and then all of the pain, the cumulative pain, comes out into the moment. And so it can be quite confusing for our partners, because the reaction may feel disproportionate to the preceding event. And so it kind of creates this psychological fog for both people involved, for the person experiencing this reaction, and then for both people experiencing that reaction. So we're going to go a lot more depth into this in my next week's webinar, I'm sorry. And that's really where we're going to investigate how attachment wounds play a huge part in how we participate in and respond to and relieve ourselves in interactions with our partners. We're going to be talking about the interplay of attachment wounds. And so I'm going to have a lot more. Today is going to be very brief. Next week we'll have a keynote presentation. It'll be 2 hours. It'll be a lot more in depth and give you a lot more information. So it's just going to be a really, really great space where we'll explore how to heal also those attachment wounds, not only in the context of a relationship, but in the context of yourself, of going inward and trying to become more aware of what's going on, because that is the basis of intimacy, is having a good relationship with yourself, and then showing up and having a good relationship with your partner. That is what promotes that intimacy and that connection, is first starting with ourselves. So we're going to look at how to unearth and bring those traumas to the surface, so that first we can be aware of them, and then we can work on transforming them and healing them, so that the inner channel to our truth isn't blocked up by all this gunk of the past. And then we can just be more receptive to what's going on presently and not be reacting from the pains of the past. And so this is overall what is going to get us more conscious, aware, healthy in the moment relationships. So we're going to explore a lot more of that next week. So please sign up. I'm going to send you an email after this, and you can go ahead and click on the link that will be in that email. It's $20. It'll be 2 hours again, and a lot more comprehensive, a lot more tools. I'll teach you some tools to kind of get there. But it's going to be really great. So I really hope to see you there. So for now, I want to show you kind of 9 common interactions that I have seen in couples. They could look, and these are toxic kind of patterns, and they can look many different ways. I'm just going to kind of go specific here and give you the 9 that I've personally witnessed. And I want to list them out first. So I want you to raise your hand if you think you have ever experienced these, or either being on the receiving end or the one dishing them out, whatever. I want you to raise your hand if you think. So I'm going to list them off. Okay. So the first is heavy amounts of blame. Raise your hands if you've had heavy amounts of blame in your relationships. Okay, great. So what about controlling behaviors like manipulations to get what you want? So not using our words, but trying to show or control in a way. Okay, great. What about not providing predictability or consistency or stability? What about put downs like name calling? Not taking responsibility or ownership of the problem. Dismissing emotions. And having constant commitment crises, like breaking up and then getting back together and then breaking up, and that cycle. And then having more negativity than positivity. And then delaying the repair. So I want to unpack some of these for you. Again, we're going to go a lot more into them next week. But for now, I just want to I want to focus on a few. So let's start with blaming. So when we are feeling slighted, it's easy to go into attack mode, and of course seeing the other person as a problem, and of course seeing ourselves as pure and blameless. But really, there is no right or wrong, win or lose in a relationship, because if one person wins, then really both people lose. It's because the connection is severed, that the connection that ties two people together is severed. So I get it. Being in that self-righteous place feels so much better than feeling sad or hurt. Because in this place, we can also get a surge of power that can serve as a way to counteract, I guess, how small someone's actions are making us feel, someone's words. So if we can make them wrong, then we won't have to feel as unseen or unheard or unlistened to or sad or disappointed. And, fill in the blank. We won't have to feel those ways anymore. And so, but it's just really a temporary way to discharge pain and release that energy. And what it really does, it distracts us from our feelings. It's a way to avoid feeling our feelings. Not only is it just a cover-up, it's that distraction. So the hyper focus on making another person wrong just disconnects us from the truth of our feelings, which also, by the way, disconnects us from the immensely important work of attempting to create a bridge between our internal life and the other person's internal life. I think I mentioned that before, which is, yes, the work of intimacy. So it bars intimacy, the blame bars intimacy, and it's the opportunity to connect from a place of intimacy, or from authenticity, I'm sorry. So instead of something like, I feel really sad that I couldn't spend time with you after work, it's you're always late, you're never around, and oh man, it's those always and never that are just so inflammatory. Do you see, it makes it much more difficult for the other person to respond in a way that's anything but defensive. What you get is attack followed by counterattack, and it's just this vicious cycle. And then the original pain just doesn't get heard, so there's no chance to repair. So here is, I guess, what it comes down to is that anytime you are feeling above or below, this is a good indication that you're entering into like toxic territory. Does that make sense? Are you guys with me? Can I get a hand raised just to know that everyone's there? Let's see. Thank you. All right, so any questions about this? Yes, Eric said, ego loves that surge of power. So true. Thanks, Eric. All right, so let's go into controlling behaviors. There are two forms of controlling behaviors that I want to talk about today. They are covert and overt. So covert behaviors, as they suggest, include underhanded ways to get the needs met, to get what we want. And then overt behaviors are obviously simply telling a partner like what to do or demanding or lecturing. So with covert behaviors, what you'll usually see is the person who's acting in a controlling way often wants something from the other partner that is legitimate, that is legitimate to want, to feel safe, to feel valued, to feel heard, supported. Obviously, that's not the problem. The problem is how they go about getting that. So here's what we'll see. We'll see some passive aggressive tendencies. So for example, instead of asking help, I don't know, bringing the groceries in, they'll say, oh, these groceries are so heavy, like my back is hurting from all the weight. So instead of asking for help, they go about it in an underhanded way. And it's just, it's restricted communication. It's possibly about being afraid to ask for what we need, which could be a vulnerability issue. It can also feel hostile to the other person, and it also just makes it less likely that those needs are going to be met if you're not clear. And then that builds resentment, and then then there's a list of grievances for what the other person isn't doing. But it's to be fair, you're not being explicit about what you need. So anytime we're afraid and avoiding, we're not connecting, and it just makes us inauthentic. So just being direct and asking for what we need, obviously not demanding, but making requests. So along those lines and what could be even more toxic is what is called emotional blackmail. In conflict, these are withholding behaviors, such as using silent treatment, retreating from the relationship, withholding love. This makes the other person just feel really scared, and it's very threatening and confusing, and it kind of creates this attention. It takes away the attention from the original grievance and the original pain, and puts it on the onus on the partner to try to get the relationship back to baseline so that they forget what they were originally bringing up. It's just abandoning and traumatizing. So everyone, has anyone experienced that? Let's see a hand raise, or if anyone wants to share. It'd be great to have some interaction. I'm talking to a screen, so any help you guys can give would be great. All right, so Eric, again, thank you. He says, we control because we're insecure, seeking to control our partner since we can't control our boss. So often the male versus the female. Can you tell I've been working on myself? Yes, thank you, Eric. Thank you for participating. I really appreciate that. So let's go to overt control. Telling our partner what to do, lecturing. Really, adults just do not tell other adults what to do. This is a surefire way to get defensiveness and attack. Instead, again, we make requests and discuss needs. But what it does, it automatically puts people in this place of resistance. No one likes to be told what to do, right? So it's less likely that they're going to hear you, and they're going to hear the need behind that demand. So it's not an environment where understanding can flourish. All right, everyone with me there? All right, so the next one is not providing consistency or stability or predictability. These are like the bedrock of a relationship, the foundation. without these, we feel anxious and we feel scared. And it makes it a lot more difficult to have the resiliency necessary to tackle conflict in a relationship. So, checking in with one another on a daily basis if you don't see each other every day, but disappearing for long periods of time, it promotes insecurity, and it's not a foundation where you can work from. So it's extremely vital and important. And we're going to go more into that next week at our next webinar. So everyone with me there? Anyone else want to contribute? Okay, I see some hands raising. All right, put downs. So put downs, of course, are sarcasm, name calling, mocking. Really, these are about power and the deliberate attempt to make someone inferior and take away their dignity. It's kind of lazy. It's really what it is. I guess Dr. John Gottman, he's a researcher. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of him. He is a researcher of couples. He's been studying them for over 30 years, and his research is about what leads couples to break up or stay together. And he's been able to notice certain patterns over time that, and with a lot of accuracy, predict kind of couples that will stay together or split. And so one of them that he noticed, a pattern that he noticed that is a big predictor of separating, is this hostility. It's this contempt, what he calls it. And it's making the other person feel less than or inferior, and it's detrimental. Over time, these accumulate and just really are toxic for the relationship. So I don't think I have to go very much into detail about this. It's just not a good thing. I think a 5-year-old would know not to name call, but again, we get so dysregulated. And again, that may be because of our past attachment wounds, that we go to this place of trying to seek power over someone just to feel that surge. But yes, so yeah, we'll explore more of that as well at our next webinar. So just don't do it. Try not to. The next one is a lack of responsibility. Everyone plays a part in the relationship. Everyone has a part in the problem. And I know initially it may be hard to go to that place of what's my part, what's my piece of the pie, because we're so just wounded. But if we can slow down, deconstruct everything, we'll see that, yeah, there's never just one person at fault. It's two people engaging in this and influencing one another. So again, that's also one that we're going to go into more at our next webinar. So the next one that we have is dismissing emotions. We cannot change our emotions. They just happen. What we may be able to change, what I look at, are the thoughts, the stories that lead to the emotions. Those we can work with, those we can kind of tweak and then maybe get different emotions. But the emotions themselves, once they're there, they need to flow and run their course. It's when we try to stop or negate or change our feelings that we create even more suffering, because not only do you have the emotion, now you have the anger or the judgment you have around the emotion. So it just amplifies the pain even more. And so it's not helpful when our partner is trying to tell us that our pain is unnecessary or it's a waste of time. It just it aggravates not only the original emotion, but the judgment we have around our emotion. And then on top of that, we have another judgment around our emotion from our partner. It's extremely dysregulating. And so then we feel alone. And we all just want to feel felt in our pain. That's just a human need, to know that another person is there with us and wanting to be there and show up and love us through the pain. Nothing is more comforting and more just promoting of safety. And even things like the well-meaning attempting to solve a problem, the other person's problem, or giving advice. Those are well-meaning intentions, but that can also be dismissive of the original feeling, because what they do is that they detract from the feeling and they take it away, and it's minimizing in a way and deflecting of what's going on. So really, if we can notice when the tendency to want to problem solve or to fix comes from this anxiety of not being able to tolerate an emotion. And it's okay to sit with an emotion. It's okay to be there. And it actually will increase feelings of safety with your partner. It will make them feel more loved. So that's that one. Any questions around that? So Nayara, I believe, is sharing one of the most frequent ways that I've noticed in failing to take responsibility, in quotes, is a person saying it's a two-way street as a way to justify the means of their toxicity. Saying, I'm neglecting you because you're neglecting me. It won't make anything better. It'll only weaken the relationship. This goes hand in hand with your statement about wanting to feel safe and secure in the relationship. Absolutely. It's like this tit for tat thing. It just, more disconnection, right? So thank you, Nayara. Absolutely true. The next one we have is constant commitment crises. It's sort of along the lines of emotional blackmail. It's really about threatening to break up during a conflict. And there are many possible reasons for this type of behavior. One of them is maybe poor skills in conflict management. Sometimes we get so dysregulated in a fight that there is this like momentary feeling of relief to cut off the relationship. And saying it's over, it's a way to escape the tension of intolerable emotions. But generally what we'll see is that they'll calm down after a few hours or some time, and then they realize, wait, this isn't actually what we want, or what I want. In the moment there's hyperreactivity and they're not thinking logically or clearly. It's a means of escape. It's a needing to kind of like a fight or flight reaction where they just need to feel like they're running away. So that can happen. Another reason is, again, to gain power when feeling powerless. It effectively holds the relationship hostage until the person gets what they want. This doesn't feel good, of course. They're dysregulating these for the other person on the other end, and obviously gets in the way of feelings of safety, and then talking about what the actual problem is and working together to solve that actual problem. It inhibits that necessary kind of coming together work. Anyone have anything to say about that one? Has anyone experienced that constant breaking up and taking away, the relationship, holding it hostage? Anyone say anything about that? I'll just wait a little bit. All right, well, if you do think of it, feel free to put it in the chat box and we can revisit later on. Oh, here we go. So Vanessa asks, how do you go about handling this in a relationship? What do you do when one person constantly wants to break up, and when one person brings up an issue? Yeah, this is really hard because on the other end, you have really limited control and there's nothing that you can really do. The only thing is just maintaining your calm and making sure. Something that I heard is like making sure one person is the resourced adult, because when our traumas are coming up and impacting how we're reacting in our relationship, that person, that high reactivity is an indication that we're not really in our adult present true selves. We're like more like acting like children. We're acting from this place of the original trauma when that happened. And so the person who is more resourced at that time, which is a huge challenge because when you're dysregulated together, it's hard to be the most resourced, but like the most resourced person is the one that just has to stay calm and grounded and just really try to breathe and get in the moment. So just not engaging in that and not giving more and not adding more fuel to the fire, but it's really difficult to do. And so I think I would recommend for that partner to really go inside and self-regulate and notice the feelings of abandonment coming up and how scary it is and how traumatizing it is, and to recognize like that hurt and that pain and try to kind of self-soothe. And if you can predict this type of behavior, if it's happened before, you know what to expect, but really just tending to your own wounds, tending to your own pain. And then once the other person kind of comes back to, just really letting them know your feelings and how that made you just completely destroyed you and gutted you, and maybe talking about a plan for how that won't happen again, and stating the importance of maintaining safety even when you're in conflict. And that means a commitment to staying together and to feeling, at least communicating that you want to hear each other out. So thanks, Vanessa. Then the last one that we have is, actually it's the second to last one, is more negativity than positivity. So again, I'm going to bring in Gottman. He talks about this 5-to-1 ratio of 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction. So because negative emotions just have more power to hurt a relationship than positive relationships do, there's like, yes, we need 5 positive ones to override and counteract the negative ones. So our brain's negativity bias, the negative ones just weigh so much more than the positive ones. So making sure to cushion the relationship with as many positive interactions as possible, so that when times of negativity come, that there will be a lot of positive ones to pull from and to use as a resource. The last one that we have is delayed repair. So it kind of goes along with the negativity bias. You know, negativity compounds rapidly, a lot more quickly than the positive ones, which is why quick repair is just so vital, so important. It's rather than waiting and sulking and moving away from, it's just really important to get in there and to start to apologize, to own your part, and to really start working on mending the wound. So that's what we have. I want to know your questions. I want to know what I can help you with. So feel free to put them in the chat box. Let's work on them. We have a few minutes. We have 10 minutes. Okay, from Eric, I see that I've seen it when women feel vulnerable after getting out of a bad relationship and trying to restart their emotions. Then I can feel less than, since I'm trying to show them love, and issues of the ex begin to surface. It's tough. Yeah, it is tough. Absolutely. Like we bring in a whole bunch of baggage from relationships that have nothing to do with us. And that's the task of a relationship, is to work with all of those things and to provide a loving environment so all those things can surface, and then we help each other out, because no relationship is free of baggage. We all bring in stuff from the past, from our past relationships. So the most loving thing you can do is to really provide a space of understanding and loving. And then what you can do for yourself, the loving thing you can do for your partner, is to really explore those issues, understand where they're coming from, so that they have less likelihood of coming in and pulling you in, and pulling the partner in without them knowing why. So it's the self-work that's so important, so necessary. Yeah, and then the relational work is what creates an environment of safety to kind of explore those, but always taking ownership, of your own part. Any other questions? What's the best book on relationships that you recommend? I would say I have a lot, but the ones that stand out in my mind are Harville Hendrix, Getting the Love That You Want. It's really a comprehensive look at relationships. It goes from everything from how we're socialized to attachment wounds with our caregivers, and how they impact the relationship. It gives you really practical tools for how to navigate the conflict and the attachment wounds in the relationship. And then I would also say that I think, obviously, John Gottman's books, talking about the different kind of communication patterns that happen, is really important, because it's helpful. While he doesn't talk about necessarily like the attachment wounds, he does talk about certain communication styles to watch out for. And so it's helpful to be able to label them when they're happening in your own relationship. So some communication styles like defensiveness and contempt and criticism, making generalizations or global characterizations of the other person's character, and how that can be detrimental as well to the communication. And so he really outlines these patterns explicitly, and then it makes it easier for us to be aware when they're actually happening, going like, oh wait, yeah, I'm engaging in that kind of general globalization, that characterization of my partner, and it's not going to be the most helpful. These are the negative ones. So it makes it more identifiable. And I would say anything by Esther Perel is really great. She has Mating in Captivity, really talking about more desire and sexuality and intimacy. And yeah, I think those are my top books. And so I also have a question from Vanessa. She says, once you have had a major conflict, you are in a place in the relationship where neither wants to be vulnerable. You notice you are disconnected. How do you start to make steps towards reconnection? How do you bring back vulnerability when both are afraid of getting hurt again? Oh, that is such a good question. It's really tough work. It's really tough, and we're feeling guarded and defended to come back together into that space. But that's what we're both longing for. We're just longing to be felt. And so sometimes it just takes one person taking that first step. Maybe it's like that one that's the most resource in that moment, recognizing that, okay, I'm going to reach out to you, and it's just one of the most loving things you can do. So sitting down, and I think also regulating yourself, okay, coming back. Sometimes you need time, but it's not just about time. It's also about actively working to kind of figure out what happened to you, getting into the space of identifying what were my emotions, what were my needs that didn't get met, so that when you come to your partner, you have more of an idea, kind of a template of what's gone on internally. And then you just share that. You just share that. You don't blame, you don't pinpoint the finger, but you just share your experience authentically. Like, when this happened, I felt myself shut down and close up. And you just describe. It's a descriptive process where you don't need to interpret. You don't need to do anything other than, when you told me that, I was I was hard to live with, my body just like closed up. I shut down. I felt really, really scared. I felt like I wanted to run away. And so what I was saying to myself is that you don't love me, and that I'm not a good partner for you. And so then you state what you needed. What I needed from you is to tell me the ways that you do care about me and you do love me, and the ways that you do enjoy living with me and being with me. I needed to hear those things. And so it sets you up so you're not starting from this big attack, aggressive kind of approach, but you're having a small startup, which makes it easier for the other person to listen to. And then take that in, and then they can also start to do like the investigative work internally for themselves, and then also then present that to you in a less aggressive way. So does that answer the question? Okay, great. All right, so we're almost out of time. We have a few minutes. Of course, she said thank you. We have a few minutes. Anyone else have any questions that I can answer? You're welcome. Eric says, thanks for everything. All right. Well, we have one more. So do you think that talking about past relationships with your current significant other can create more of an understanding? Or do you think that the past is a past and it is a chapter that should not be reopened? I am obviously kind of biased to this. I believe that the past should always be investigated and then talked about, because when we don't open the past, then things stay there, lodged in ourself, like our subconscious. And it's this what Dr. Alexander Solomon calls relational self-awareness. It's about knowing yourself in the context of relationships. And that includes identifying the patterns of the past and how they're influencing the present. It contextualizes conflict. And so that can depersonalize sometimes the high intensity and the pain that we feel is like, okay, this is their soft spot. This is their trigger point. So it not only depersonalizes it and makes it feel less personal, it also allows a person to start to recognize how they're pulling in the past into the present. And if we don't talk about those things, it's harder to have that knowledge, that awareness. So I think it's really vital and really important to talk about the past. Obviously not when we're dysregulated, but in moments of calm, in moments of reflection. I think this also communicates to our partner that we're willing to investigate and do the work on ourselves so that we can be more present. Why is it so hard to break away? We'll do one more. Why is it so hard to break away from a relationship? Have you ever seen a toxic relationship change for the better? Well, I think this is a really good question. It's hard to break away from a relationship, especially a toxic one, because there's something called a trauma bond. You know, when people have such highs and lows in a relationship, it can almost become quite addictive. So the lows followed by the highs make the highs so much more intense. And so it's this, like, you know, when you're going through something that's bringing up a lot of adrenaline and making you feel a lot, that's what they say. Like, if you're dating somebody, go and do some, like, jump off a cliff and you'll feel more connected, because that's like a trauma bond. And so I think that's what happens with relationships that are pretty toxic and just a whole bunch of conflict, is that there's the such low moments are followed by, like, maybe they're not so high, but they're like normal moments of connection that can feel really high in contrast to the low moments. And so it's this addiction kind of experience that happens. Have I ever seen a toxic relationship change for the better? I have. It takes a lot of dedication. It takes, again, relational self-awareness. It takes looking inward, each partner wanting to do the work of looking inward and really trying to become self-aware. Without that, I don't think it's possible to change a toxic relationship. There has to be a willingness on both people's parts to really be self-reflective and to do that deep diving into their own life. And without that, it's really hard to change. You need that in a relationship. So. All right. Well, I think that was our last question. I've really enjoyed being here today. Thank you again for joining me on a Saturday. I know this is not the most ideal place to be on a Saturday, but I really appreciate you taking the time. I am, looking forward to seeing you possibly next week. Please join me. We're really going to look at this a lot more. We'll talk more about these things. We'll talk about attachment wounds and traumas and how to heal them, because that's so important. So thank you all so much. And I really appreciate I had so much fun. Thanks. Bye, everyone.